I winced, biting my lips so hard I tasted blood. A flurry of white feathers walked past me, and I struggled to hold up my cloaking spell. I glared at them, my anger rising. How had my immortal life turned to this? I nearly chuckled. I am a demon, for lack of a better term. However, I am not evil. At least, I think not. Though I suppose that at first sight, I would be considered a demonic spirit. My retractable talons and crisp, charred grey skin made that clear for all to see. My scaly wings, as black as night, had been torn from my back by an ancient force and reduced to 2 bloody stumps. They would grow back, but for now, I mourned the loss of the companions that once took me to the skies. Those of you who read my previous post will understand what I'm talking about. I do not have much time to spare, and I will not waste a second more on adding any backstory. They swept the entire house, and I had only just managed to perform a cloaking spell in time. My resources were dwindling, and I knew that if I could not find a place to rest and gather my energy, the chances of me surviving this entire ordeal would be plummet. But what purpose did living have anymore? Purpose. What a simple word, yet so flawed and complex. A meaning that grew more and more barren by the day. I had a purpose once, to love and to be loved. But all that came crashing down one cursed dark day. The day the man I loved died, killed because of a mistake. My mistake. Now, my purpose was nothing. All I had was magic, but not even the strongest power can bring back the ones you love. No magic can do that. There truly is nothingness after death. And no one can come back from that. No one. I sighed, finally letting the veil of invisibility fall apart. It was getting harder and harder to maintain these cloaks, and to use my magic so frequently warranted yet another risk. I could not walk assuming my normal form. Every time I came to Earth, I had to use another body, a host. Even that was only a temporary solution. My power was too great to be contained by a frail human body, and the more magic I did, the faster the flesh was consumed. If I was lucky, I would have another month before being forced to return to hell, my home. I sighed. I had to rest, to recover and heal. My wings were still broken, healing all too slowly. I held up my hands and stared at the palm of my hand. I had taken on the body of a young man, 25 of age, and a loner. No one knew him, thus making him an easy target. My skin was pale, contrasting starkly with my midnight black hair. I inhaled deeply, calling upon the energy within. Nothing. I could feel the energy within me, but every time I attempted to summon the power, it rose weakly before collapsing, dull and sluggish, cold and exhausted. I stifled a yawn. Where else could I go? This was the third time the angels had broken past the walls surrounding my safe house, and I did not have enough strength to spare for a fourth. I needed some place where I could be left in peace without being forced to use my magic. It would only be for a day, ample time to regain my powers in peace. That was when it hit me. It was predictable, yes, but only for the first few days. They likely would have checked there at least twice by now. They would not check a third time. Just in case, though. I popped open a vial of silvery, transparent liquid. At first glance, it looked just like water. but if you stared long enough, you would notice a bizarre, enigmatic sparkle of light within. Just a spark, but there. It was a poison, fast-acting and lethal to the angels and demons alike. It could corrode flesh and devour bone in seconds. It was also very rare, and I remember feeling quite reluctant to use it. But it was my only chance. I packed my bag, always holding the vial in my right hand. Then I departed. It took me a few hours, but I finally got there. The place where it all began. A tear slid down my cheek, and I felt my heart begin to shatter just as it did when I first heard the news. It was here that I learned that my lover, Liam, had died. Because of me. Because of my mistake. A mistake that would later lead me down the path that ended here. The mistake that led to all of this. I attempted to use my powers, every last drop of magic I had, to resurrect Liam. But it was all for nothing. It cost me everything. My status, my wings, and if I was not careful enough, it would cost me my life. All for nothing. I sighed. This was no time for regrets. I had to go, now. I walked inside. I did not have the strength to light a candle, and the moment I entered the bedroom, I fell asleep, one hand still tightly clutching the bottle of poison that formed the entirety of my backup plan. Even sleep did not offer a reprieve from the madness, as dark figures haunted my dreams. I could not see them, but I felt such an intense urge to run the moment I saw them. No matter how fast, however, they would always find me, and I would always wake up where I first began. So it went, for hours upon hours, an infinite nightmare that would not end. Even in my dreams. Soon, as the dawn rose, I awoke to the feeling of being watched. My eyes widened. I sprang out of my bed, my eyes already beginning to scan the darkened chambers. A man stood in front of my bed. I gulped. Who was this man? He was creepy, that was for sure. He was wearing a suit, and his expression was unreadable. He was staring at me, and I stared back. So it went for a few minutes, until I could no longer bear it, and asked the question. Who are you? Silence. Then, as if waking from a trance, the man spoke. I cursed my stupidity at that moment.
We both know who I am. You've been running for ages from me, after all.
God. God was here. He was going to kill me. My heart sank. I closed my eyes, preparing for the excruciating pain as I was turned to nothingness. What came after for me, I did not know, but I knew that soon I would find out. I waited, and waited, and waited. I opened my eyes, confused. If he was going to kill me, then why not do it now? What game was he playing? He looked just as confused as I did.
What in the name of the three realms are you doing?
I struggled to speak, but the words escaped me. Awaiting the agony of death.
Why is it that every time I talk to a demon, they assume I plan on killing them? I mean, sure, that's happened to every demon to whom I've given the grace of speaking with me, but that hardly means that it's gonna happen all the time.
I squinted, trying to assess the situation. I did not trust this deity. I noticed that he looked different than the last time I saw him. I had often heard that God assumed different forms every day, and now looking back, I suppose it's true. God wears many faces. Why are you following me? I asked. Flattery would not save me should he choose to do as I expected him to, so I did not waste my breath. He nodded.
Straight to business, then. Very well.
Come with me. Without waiting for an answer, he walked away, and I quickly gathered my belongings to follow. He walked out of the apartment, and I watched in astonishment as we both entered an entirely new world. Around me, a spacious chamber blossomed where there was once a small reception with a single guard watching. A huge table took up most of the room, with 2 chairs at either end. A goblet of some unidentifiable golden liquid lay untouched. I stared at it, attempting to gauge its properties. He noticed my reluctance.
It's angel blood.
I stared at him in shock. As in, the blood of an angel.
Angel blood has great healing properties, able to completely restore the vitality of its drinkers. They are eager to give it to me. And who am I to resist their pleas? Take it if you wish, or leave it.
I looked at it suspiciously. If he wanted to kill me, he would have done so already, right? Unless this was some part of larger plan. I took a sip. It was sweet and tasted more like honey than blood. I felt rejuvenated, transformed. I let out a long sigh of contention, and he laughed.
Tastes good, doesn't it?
I nodded, gulping it down faster and faster. I felt all the wounds I had accumulated over the past few weeks seal up immediately, and my mind felt at ease. I stared at him. So, can you explain why you've been following and sending your angels after me? He nodded.
A few weeks ago, you opened a portal in order to resurrect somebody. You, I believe.
I glared.
Liam.
I growled. Venom laced into my every syllable. He nodded, waving his hand.
Yes, Liam. Anyway, when you tore into the third world, you encountered certain entities, correct?
I nodded, my anger already subsiding, no doubt an effect of the contents of the glass. He sighed.
Now comes the hard part. You see, what you believe about me and about yourself is all wrong. I am afraid.
I stared at him, my face composed to not show any of my shock or intrigue. He continued.
You're not a demon, and I'm not your creator.
Now I was truly surprised. My face betrayed my thoughts, and he nodded.
We are something new. We're not from this universe, but rather from another. I cannot recall much of our true home, and do not care to. We are all perfectly comfortable here after all.
Blood rushed to my head as I stared at him in shock. What he was saying, it was something that I had never heard before. Not in books, not in any ancient scripture or text. He did not address my shock, instead, opting to continue to explain what I was sure would be a fascinating and long-winded tale. It can't get any crazier than this, right? I thought. I was dead wrong. This was just the beginning.
We are parasites. These bodies, they were never ours. They belong to a far more powerful race of beings. Beings that are now rare, nearly driven to extinction. They were the demons. They were the angels, and they were the gods. They were locked in eternal war, one side devoted to creation, the other born for destruction. They were stupid and only listened to their most basic impulses. They were so easy to take over, however. There were those with immunity. They were intelligent, powerful and manipulative. They were monstrous and hideous, but they were immune to our powers. We could not take them over. The strength of one of them outweighs our collective power. Their magic is far beyond ours.
They made sure of this.
I listened intently to what he was saying. I was beginning to recall fragments of it. Fragments of my time as a parasite. Watching, observing, striking when the time was right. I could not think straight. Who was I, if not a demon? Who was I before I forgot all of this? Blood continued to rush towards my brain, and I felt my breathing turn shallow. He stared at me with an expression of concern before reluctantly touching my arm.
Calm down. It's always hard to remember. Let the memories come naturally,
he whispered. My fists clenched, and I let go. They would return soon. There was no need to force it. I repeated that over and over as he went on. They hobbled us, crippled our powers. We would only be able to access a fraction of the true potential these bodies offered. Some of us were strong enough to remember, but the others forgot our history. The same moment this happened was the moment we locked them away. We constructed a new world for them, one that not even they could destroy. Not because it was strong, but because it was too dark. We made it that way. Made it so that darkness ate the light. They would see nothing. They would be incapable of finding the weak points of the prison. But you tore down the veil, showed them the path to our world. You literally gave them a key to returning and slaughtering us all. My eyes widened. I did that? He nodded. His expression was neutral. I expected anger, disappointment, perhaps even fear. But he was none of that. What was this strange power of his that eluded definition and allowed him to show only what he desired? Now, it will take time, but they will manage to break through. And when they do, we have to be ready. One of them could take on an entire army of us, and so we must prepare. Can't you do something about it? I mean, you're literally a king. If I am in truth a king, my dear, then they are the true gods. He stood up. I stared, still trying to process all of this, as the walls around us, as white as paper, began to shift and twist. Reality tore and stretched around me, and the world spun. I stared, transfixed as the room changed. Now it was blank, save for a bed. It was regal and seemed to have been made for a king himself. I suppose it was. Next to that bed stood a table upon which a clear glass pot lay untouched. I observed it carefully. It was filled with some constantly moving liquid. It shimmered and whirled in a vortex of blue and white light. He gestured to the pot. There is only one way we could possibly gather enough strength in order to fight them off. All those years in prison will have only strengthened them. And so, we must act fast. You know what a mortal is, correct? I rolled my eyes. Of course. There he held up his hand. What you think is not important. Simply put, mortals were the strongest species amongst the universe before we arrived. What? I asked. What in the realms was this? First, I learned that everything I knew was false. And now this. I had no idea what to even call him now. God? King?
that did not matter. How are humans stronger than creatures that can destroy all of us without lifting a finger? I finally asked, now afraid to hear the answer.
They were certainly not the strongest in terms of their magic, but that does not matter. It is what is within that truly makes them one of the most fascinating and enthralling creatures within this world. They were sentient, unlike the minds that inhabited these bodies before. They could not only destroy, but they could create. They were trapped in the middle of a never-ending battle between creation and destruction, light and darkness, good and evil. Their souls hold great power, power that lies dormant within them. Now, we can harness this power. It remains useless to us while they live, but if we act fast enough, we can trap their spirits and draw power from it in death.
I stared. What he was saying, it made no sense, but at the same time, the pieces were continuing to come together like a complex puzzle. How many? I asked, barely a whisper. He stared at me, unflinching.
All of them.
My wings flared up, two barely recognizable bony structures. I felt my breathing quicken once more.
What? No, we cannot possibly do that. We have to.
I would rather have you on my side when I do.
I stumbled backwards. I have to think about it. He nodded.
Think as much as you like, but be quick about it. The threat from our enemy grows by the minute.
And with that, he vanished. I had a bit of thinking to do. All my life, I had strived for one thing. Purpose. What purpose did I have now? What reason did I have for my own existence? Now, I stood at a crossroad. I had two purposes, one of which was right, and the other which would guarantee my survival. Which would I choose? What would Liam do? I wondered. I chuckled. He would choose the selfish option. He would gladly give up every last life on Earth to survive. He was smart and did not hold himself to most morals. He had barely batted an eye when I told him how I needed a host to arrive on Earth. For him, only he and those he cared about truly mattered. But what would I choose? Liam was dead, and that could not be reversed. What would I choose? I knew that I had to act fast. Two paths. One most certainly a death sentence, and the other a path to glory and wealth. Unless there was a third. My eyes lit up. Could it be? Then the entire room went dark. The light faded, but my demonic eyes could see clearly even through the darkness. He appeared once more, scowling. His hands sparkled with vengeful flame, the only sources of light within this chamber.
You have made your choice, huh?
I stammered. Please, there's another way. All those innocent people, they don't have to die. We can find another way, I'm sure of it. He sighed, staring at me with aged, tired eyes.
I've had millennia to search for another way, and I couldn't find it. This is the only way.
And I will execute my plan.
I'd rather have you as an ally when I do. Please reconsider.
I shook my hand. I will not. This is my choice. He scowled.
So be it.
The room darkened even more as the light fed the fires. I assessed my options, a flood of thoughts rushing through my mind. If those flames touched me, I would be burnt alive. There would be no escape. I had to strike first. But how? The answer came to me like a freight train.
No!
I screamed, a blast of fire narrowly missing the deity that stood before me. He smirked, but then my magic hit its target. His eyes widened as I felt my power reach out to the millions of souls that he had consumed over the years. I shrieked in agony as they entered my body, sending me into a painful seizure. I could barely think as my bones clothed themselves from my back. I could barely move as a spiritual energy filled my veins. I shuddered, feeling the full effects of what I had done. I felt my wings tear themselves from my back, as white as snow and full of feathers. They were heavy, with sharp, bony tips. I tried to move them, but even the slightest movement sent my muscles into an eternity of torment. The deity in front of me stumbled, falling towards the ground, and always reaching for that vessel. I stared at him. He was pathetic, but I could not waste any more time in fighting. No doubt he had already alerted his armies to the fugitive within his walls. I thought about my options. In the past, I always needed a host to walk amongst humans, but now, I was no meager demon anymore. I was still me, still a demonic entity, but now, I was something greater than that as well. I reached out my hands. I did not even need the Acheron. I simply reached out, pulling away the strands of reality and passing it to the mortal world. I did not even need a host. I stared at my reflection. I was startled. Where there had once been grey, crisp skin, there was now color, albeit faint. My talons were wider and shorter. My eyes, my strange, soulless, fiery eyes, had turned to a mysterious shade of red within a sea of white. An island of black lurked within that red. I was taller. I was more human. Whether this was a result of me arriving on Earth without a host, or a result of whatever new power that flowed within me, I do not know. I needed clothes. But could I risk using my magic? What would happen if I did? In the past, my host would die in months if I used my magic too much. But I was not using a host anymore, was I? The rules were different now. So was I. I do not know the new limits of my powers now, but I must hide as long as I can, and try to find some other way to get the power my kind needs to survive. I will not let them hurt you. God is weakened extensively. I can say for sure that he will not attempt such a large-scale destruction act for a long time. But he will find me. This might be my last post here. I have a new purpose now. The purpose that I was always meant for. I am uncertain whether or not I made the right call, but at least I can sleep at night.